To set up the playbacks, we'll first set the output channels. So we have the output selection, and we are going to select a device. In this case it will be just my left side or center or right, it doesn't really matter right now. We'll choose left for one, and we can do the same for the other. Choose right for the second one. Now we can start recording. In the settings, we are going to select playback sounds. You can select each folder for each cage or channel. We are going to pick up a song from the WAV files. We can play it. You can see that it works. You can have several options here. Don't record playback, which means that when the playbacks is induced, you are not going to see that in your recording output. And you can have different features here, including randomly selecting sounds each time that playback is activated, or auto-scrolling the sound one after each other in the folder. Whatever we set, we can always lock it such that when you're just pressing a key by chance, it will not change those very important choices. Another important choice here is to have two lists per sessions, which is something that you want to use if you want to train birds, for example, to press on one key to hear one sound, and on another key to hear another sound. And we are going to talk about it a bit later. Right now we'll go back to one list, which is the simplest mode, and then we'll go to set up the actual training session. And you can see that for every channel or animal we can set up to two different sessions. If we uncheck sessions, then we are not going to be able to have any playbacks, so we need to set up sessions. Every session has a time, say from 9 a.m. to say 11 p.m. That will be the entire day. We can set the session to start on time or anytime randomly after 9 o'clock and before 11. And the most important thing is to set the playback mode, which can be either passive playback. In this case, we are going to have sounds play randomly at certain odds. So right now, for example, the odds are 0.1, namely 10% every second. And after a playback, there is going to be a gap of 2 seconds before another playback can be induced, which you want to change if you have longer playbacks. You can set up a quota of how many playbacks maximum the bird can hear every session. The second session can be set to be different time or using different mechanism. For example, in this case, I set the session to start more or less at the same time, but set a different mechanism so that right now the session will be induced by pecking on a key. And in this case, we can set, for example, that any one key will activate the playbacks too. And in this case, we can again set a quota. You can see that there is no odds here. And now at the same time, we have randomly played sounds. That probability is from the beginning of session, and there are not too many, so it will end up shortly after that. And then during the session, the bird can also activate playback by clicking on a key. Now, of course, if you are setting the playback to be activated by the keys, we can also set the list of sounds that is going to be activated by those particular keys, which we will describe in a moment. Going back into the main, if we now start training, you can see immediately that we have the two keys turns red in this case, which is key 1 and key 2, and we have playbacks that are going to happen randomly, in a probability of 0.1 every second with 2 seconds gap. So you can see that we already had one passive playback that occurred, and in this case we just set up the keys to be read because we really don't have a card here. Here is another passive playback, and so on. That's how it goes. Let me stop it for a moment. Those are the two issues that you need to know about setting the playbacks, but now we can talk about the actual operant device, which we can see here, and what we are going to do is to enable the operant training. That means that we have a National Instruments card installed in our computer. Once we click on that, and if the card is installed, which is by the way not the case here, so the keys are all going to look as if they are activated, then we have to set up the ports and the lines for each one of those cards. And for most National Instruments cards, you'll have a certain number of ports, in this case maybe 3, and each port has 8 lines. So if you have 3 ports and 8 lines, then you have 24 channels. For example, port 0 line 0, point 0 line 1, and so forth. And once we activated those and set up the right device number, then we are going to have the training activated by the appropriate keys, which you will need to test. We're not going to cover that right now. An important issue about the playbacks, as I mentioned earlier, is to set up which sound is going to be activated by each key. In this case, in the sounds, if I'm setting 2 lists, then you can see that in the sessions, I can actually choose which sound list will be activated. For example, in this case, what we are going to have is the sound list is going to be 1A, and that means that pressing any key will activate a sound in list 1A, whereas the passive playbacks will activate a sound in list 1. Let's go back to the sounds, and you can see here is list 1, and here is list 1A. Now, if we, for example, set it such that we are going to have only one key activating, so for example it will be key 1 activated, and you go back to main, you'll see that we see only one key set up here. And if we are going now and cancel session 2, you will see in the main there are no keys here, but you can see the passive playback signs, which is these speakers. So one last point is that the color of the box, so to speak, is going to change with the status. For example, when it's going to turn bright, that means that there is a playbacks going on in this particular moment. When the color is going to change from teal into olive, that means that the quota has elapsed and the bird cannot hear any more sounds during this session. So let's wait a moment, and here you could see the change in color during the playback.